and welcome to the Self-Love Project, a work of love by over 30 people. A work of love by over 30 people, which is just so incredible. So the first thing I want to say is thank you so much to everyone who was involved in making this project a success. I would not have been able to do this without you all. So thank you so much for just being willing and excited and happy to send me voice memos to make this come to life. My vision for the project was to bring different perspectives to the podcast on the whole concept of self-love. And we're going to go into the different aspects with each episode that will be released. So we'll talk about self-love, we'll talk about self-care, self-reflection, and self-awareness. We'll talk about self-celebration, self-improvement, boundaries, self-compassion and forgiveness, relationships with others, and how they influence self-love. I'm a firm believer in learning from others. And so even when I was creating this podcast, my goal was to create a podcast that would bring different perspectives. And so with this project, it's bringing so many different perspectives on aspects of self-love. And so my hope is that when people listen to this, they can get at least one thing, learn one new thing from somebody, or you could listen and be like, oh, this really resonates with me. Or you could listen and be like, oh, you know what? Maybe if I start doing this, that could actually help me out. So that's my hope, is that we all learn from someone out there and that we can all continue to grow. So I really hope that you guys will enjoy this project. Make sure that you share with people. I think there's just so much that can be learned from this project, and I'm so excited. So without further ado, I present to you our 5th episode in the Self-Love Project.
What have I done to improve myself over the years? I think some of the top things are probably conflict management and the ability to say less sorry. Let me start with the first one. I am pretty conflict avoidant, and it makes me really uncomfortable to hurt somebody or make them feel like I've hurt them, even if I'm in the right. I just don't like upsetting somebody. That's a very uncomfortable thing for me. But I think over time, I have learned that part of being adults and letting people know what the boundary lines are and how the space to exist harmoniously is very important and a big part of having a healthy relationship. So I've just forced myself to take a moment and have like a dialogue in my head. So I don't like the part where there's any like yelling or any angry tone, so I don't do that at all. I don't subscribe to that, but I do find ways to like explain to people what's going on in my head, even if it's super intense, because I think they have the they have the rights to hear what's going on and that they've upset me, or I would like to know why I have upset somebody. So even if the conversation's tough, I do try to ask questions as much as I can. It's very uncomfortable, but with more time of doing it, it's kind of like a muscle, right? It gets better. And specifically, how did I, even get this perspective or get better at it is through listening to a podcast. I listen to Brene Brown a lot. I also read her book. I think it's through a lot of reading and podcasts actually from like different people that has kind of showed me the way, or like it's putting me in a direction to have healthy relationship, and part of that is managing conflict, and the goal is not to avoid conflict but is to be better at managing conflict. And that's probably one of the biggest things that I've learned in my adult life, and I'm still learning. It's different for different people. Culturally, when I go back home, it's also different kind of conflict setting that I have to manage, and also tailor my typical response to the people who are around me. So that's one. Second one is saying less sorry. So again, culturally speaking, from Malaysia, we say sorry a lot, like not in a way that we just feel sorry for everything, but it's kind of like a default response for a lot of things. And I think in the past 3 years, it's come off as, oh, I'm just sorry for being. I'm just sorry for whatever I'm doing. And that really bothered me a lot that, people would say that to me, because I'm not sorry for being myself. But when it came to that stage, that's when I was like, I need to do better. I can't be sorry for everything and not own my narrative or like my experience. So that's one of the things too. So I started paying more attention when I do that, and when I'm around people who do that a lot, I also like let them know that you're not supposed to be sorry for this. You can be sorry for the situation, but or like feel bad for what's happening. Or you could feel sorry for someone, but you don't have to be sorry. So try to get the definitions around it and do that with people. And also when I'm sorry for like a given situation for people, or if I want to just be there for them as a friend, I make sure that's what I'm saying, and I'm not just being sorry for my being. I'm getting better at it, but I think like, you do something for 20 plus years, it's not easy to turn it off. But those are the two big things that I've definitely picked out to improve on, and I've improved a lot on, and would like to improve on more.
So over the years, I've definitely decided that I just want to be to myself. I guess like the perfect word for it is to be in solitude. And through that, I realized like over the years, I had been in relationships that some were good and some were bad. And, through them, I learned what I could have done better and different ways that things could have went. But also just being able to realize in some of them that I wasn't ready to be in that relationship, and that I just had to find my my goals in life, and also my standards, and kind of like my barriers for myself first before I could commit to a serious relationship. And another way I kind of have done that is also by, this is a crazy example, but running a half marathon. When you run a half marathon, your body and mind literally have to connect. And if there's like a small little, that voice in your head that tells you like, oh, you don't have to do this, then your body literally listens to it. So that has been my way of kind of like knowing like how to really like be in connection with myself, and use that as a way to improve myself, and know when that if something gets harder, that I can overcome it, and being over to appreciate that I have that mental strength to do things that I want to do, and to be able to improve myself.
So there are a lot of things that I've done over the past couple years to improve myself. I would say the main thing now, so I typically, historically, let's say, I've had a generally negative viewpoint on life and people, more pessimistic, and that impacted myself, my own mental health, and those probably around me to some extent. But this is a practice, right? Like I can't just snap my fingers and see everything as rainbows and butterflies. That's a little bit of extreme, but nonetheless, it has been helpful for me to acknowledge the reasons, like past events or experiences, and gain insight on the reasons why I historically have been more pessimistic. And then there's been just like daily practices that I've engaged in over the last at least year. Gratitude practices, just acknowledging things that I'm grateful for, and kind of seeing the joy in life, or the joy in daily activities. And this in part comes through my meditation practice. And there's one meditation teacher who says something along the lines that I'm butchering right now, but joy is our present moment minus our judgment of it. So really trying to embody that and practice that has been something that has been helpful in my life.
So one thing I have improved about myself is basically stop drinking alcohol. I've not drunk a sip of alcohol in the last 3 years, and it was just a big part of my social life. And I just hanging out with friends with drinking, doing anything with drinking. So I think not drinking has given me a sense of self and understanding of who I am internally when I'm socializing with people. Because as a painter, when I have like an open reception or any kind of event, I have to be self-aware, and I felt like if I drinking kind of took away that, and I feel like it's improved my interactions with people I meet at gallery openings or art shows, whatever the case may be. So it's definitely improved my sleeping pattern. It's improved a lot of things in my life. So I'll say that's been it. And I don't drink alcohol anymore. And it's just been something I've been really proud of. So, yeah.
Some of the things I have done over the years to improve myself, two things. One is to intentionally set aside time to sow into the thing that I'm trying to improve about myself. And number two is to surround myself with the people, friends, mentors who are striving to achieve what I want to achieve or already ahead of me and I can look up to, I can learn from, and who can encourage me on the journey that I'm on. So as an example, I wanted to improve myself in the amount of physical activity that I was doing, how much exercise I was doing, how much sport, how much I was exercising my body in general. So to do that, I knew that time is finite and I have to intentionally set aside time to do that. So I could say for whatever number of days a week, for at least an hour, I must set aside time to sow into physical activity of some sort. And the more I did it, the more I improved. And number two, I said to myself, I need to surround myself with people who are into this. So I believe that you need to have strategic friends. So one of the strategic friends I have is one who loves to exercise. She loves physical fitness as well. So constantly messaging each other, finding each other to say, hey, there's this going on, a physical activity. Do you want to partake in it? Oh, I already do this. I already play this sport. Do you want to come join me? And then that person is great company. And then it encourages you and it's fun to be doing it with someone else. So surrounding yourself with the right people who are also doing what you're trying to do is really helpful. On my journey of physical exercise and activity, I had a friend, I call her my physical activity mentor, my exercise mentor. She was very into fitness. She was constantly messaging me, looking for me, asking me to join this exercise class or this activity. It used to frustrate me at first because I was like, I don't have time. What do you want? But because I knew she was trying to get me to a certain level, she was mentoring me in a way, I just listened and I just took her counsel and I would accept her invitations. And before long, it's now ingrained in my system. So she doesn't need to do that anymore. She doesn't need to constantly invite me or to look for me or to urge me to join certain things related to physical activity. It's already ingrained in my system. And for that, I'll forever thank her. She really was a key part in getting me to where I am today in terms of discipline and focus and intent when it comes to physical activity.
So I think that's a good question. I think some of them were very intentional, hard, like start improvements, I suppose. In that at the beginning of college, I looked back at my high school years and realized that I had some flaws that I wanted to change moving forward. So I'd say those are like hard or like a hard set, like deciding to change and improve, and I ended up doing that. So being more, I guess, realizing jokes and when people would joke at my expense as well. I feel like I didn't take that well when my friends did that in high school, but in college I decided to even have self-deprecating jokes as well. So and overall it made my experience better. So that was good. So that was like a hard start improvement. Other improvements have just been gradual in terms of being like, oh, like I was annoyed at this and now I'm going to try to not be annoyed at this, or like, oh, like I've been joking about this, but it's really not something I want to be joking about, so I'm going to like not joke about this. Or just having experiences in college mostly that opened my mind and my eyes and enabled me to change some of my worldviews for things. So I would say that's another way that I've improved myself there.
Since this is a podcast about love, the example that I'm going to give about self-improvement has to do with unreciprocated love. Um, but I once liked a guy, and things didn't work out. And as I was reflecting on, what were some things that were difficult and challenging in the relationship, I did not have a car. So every time we went on a date, he had to pick me up. And it was fine, but my independent black self was like, no, never again. Secondly, in terms of improving my appearance, I never had braces growing up, and I had a pretty pronounced tooth gap, which is beautiful. But I also found myself in a cultural context where every kid had braces, and so the norm was to just have perfect straight teeth. And so I decided, after that relationship didn't work out, you know what? I'm going to improve my appearance. And the one thing that I did was get braces. And the last thing was, everyone gets a new hairstyle after a breakup. And so I got a new hairstyle. It was a lot shorter than what I usually put in, and it was a lot curlier, and it was a different color. And I was like, you know what? YOLO, because life is too short.
So from the beginning of my life, I was not the smartest kid in school, right? I remember, I think probably I was like 5 or 6 years old, and I remember walking up to the smartest student in the school that time, because he was the one that represented the school in quizzes and competitions. And I asked him, hey man, how come you're so smart? How come you smarter than everybody else? And he said, you got to build yourself, and that stuck with me, right? So what I did was I would, when my class was going on, I'll pay attention, but then I also go back to go listen to classes years before me. Imagine you're like in grade, I don't know, 6, and then you go back to go check out grade 3's or grade 4's classes. I was learning basic math. I went back to the fundamentals to learn that. So I built myself educationally from principles, right? And I think that has helped me in my entire career till this very day. That was the first thing I built. The next one was financially, right? I wanted to get better overall with finances and all of that. And so I paused and I went to do this huge research into how rich people get rich, all the different options. I even looked at drug dealers as well. I did all the math and I did all the calculations. I analyzed all the richest people in the world, and I came up with the answers that I needed to help me, to set me on the path that I needed to go on. And then after that, I was at the point where I was good with money and all of that, but I realized I still wasn't happy. So at that point, I started to look inwards and say, okay, what is the key to happiness for me? And this was the point where I was like, okay, I needed to build relationships and I needed to make myself into a much better person. I wanted to be self-aware. I wanted to be self-reflective, and I wanted to love myself more. I realized all those years of hustle and all that, I was not loving myself at all. I was just hustling. That's it. I was in survival mode, right, the whole time. So I started doing a lot of things. Now I read a lot of books, and I take the time, hanging out with friends is actually something important to me. That never used to be on my radar before, but now I take the time to hang out with friends. I take the time to reflect. And if I say something wrong, I take the time to apologize. I take the time to hear people out. And I think it's just made me an overall much better person. These are the things that I've done to improve myself so far. And lastly, I've learned that life is short and to enjoy life in the moment.
Self-improvement is very important to me. Something that I think as I've gotten older, I have very much so focused on being better financially, being more in control and trying to spend more thoughtfully on what I'm doing. I've also started new hobbies outside of work and wanted to be able to completely disconnect a lot of the time from my computer. I was a amateur blogger for a couple of years, but I found as I've gotten older that working with my hands, like baking, cooking, and knitting, are 3 things that I just really enjoy. I'm definitely in my sourdough era. As a young person, I also have really worked on my ability to kind of control my anxiety and worrying about everything.
wanting people to always like me and my decisions has led to a lot of conflict and actually a lot of crying on my end. And I've learned, and I'm still in the process of learning, using meditation, moving my body, and just taking time to reflect on how to make my own decisions and be confident in the decisions that I make. Messing up is like not the worst thing that could happen. Looking back on my life and realizing that I didn't like a lot of the decisions I made because they were other people is actually the worst part. And so that's what I've really focused on when I'm trying to become a better version of myself. I have also spent a lot of time figuring out which movement I do like to do in order to keep my body strong and healthy. And for me, it's been yoga, walking, and strength training have really been it for me. I do like cycling and other like hiking and such, but I definitely come back to yoga, walking, and strength training as the things that I really love for myself. I do just think it's important to learn about yourself, and that's what self-improvement is.
One thing I've done to that's a hard question. I mean, I guess I'll take the professional route. So, like I said earlier, learning to speak up for myself, be confident at least, not in as like being bullied way, but acknowledging that I have some information and some knowledge and not hesitating to share my knowledge is something that I've learned over time. So, sometimes, at least for my clients, and I speak with clients, it sort of just comes out. People are sort of freestyling, and I've learned that I have a place in that, and I can be proactive. I can say, this is what's on my head.
I think I have continued trying to be more introspective and reflective, and I think one of the things that I have done for myself at least is to love myself more. I realized that a lot of my lack of boundaries were because I was looking for love in the wrong places instead of giving that love to me. And I had to learn the hard way. And I think I've been in a space of really navigating and basically trying to unpack what it means to really love myself and what it means to make boundaries and what it means to have the relationships I have in my life currently. And I think it can be hard. I think I've been in a space where I've been in my alone time a lot more than I had in the past. And it's weird because I'm an only kid. So I've been alone, hello. But I think I've been really finally unpacking that and really trying to enjoy it instead of trying to escape it, really acknowledging my alone time and my time for myself and me taking care of myself is really important. Being able to be patient as well with myself as much as I was with other people. Being able to learn to be more discerning and to listen to my intuition a lot more, because I think sometimes when you're looking for love in the wrong places, or looking for love in general, and you haven't really developed a really strong relationship with yourself, you will feel the intuition ringing. You hear the alarm bells, but you kind of mask it for yourself because you're like, no, it's not that bad. It's actually maybe things are actually working out for the better. So that's something that I've been working on. Still a big work in progress, but that has been the pivotal thing. And also, one of the things that I would also say I've learned over the years is to not take a lot of the things, especially past relationships, be it friendships, be it people who I loved who are no longer in my life, to not take that shit as personally. Not to say I'm perfect and I haven't made mistakes and whatever, but being able to look at something in a situation for what it was, being able to say, like, maybe I could have done this better. Maybe I could have done, they could have done something better. But being able to really cherish the memories I had, I think that has made me enjoy, it's made me enjoy my life a lot more, instead of just looking at like, dang, like, why didn't it work out or whatever. I've looked at it like, hey, it was not meant to be, and I'm grateful for the time that we had.
Self-improvement is definitely one of my favorite things in life. I would actually consider it a personal hobby of mine. So when it comes to self-improvement, there's two main things that I've worked on in the last couple of years, which I'm going to touch on. One is mental and one is physical. So what I found on the mental side is that after you finish your formal education, it's really up to you if you want to keep on learning. So I decided to read books after that. I read one book every month. I read 12 books a year. Some years I read more books than that. Some years I read slightly less books than that. But I do try to aim at one book every single month of the year. And I found that that's helped me a lot in terms of my my thinking patterns, in terms of the way I think about business, the way I think about life, the way I look at social life and all those kind of things. And then the second thing I did was on the physical side. I'm someone who's of a very small build. And at a certain point, I realized, okay, I'm really, really underweight. So I decided I'm going to put on some weight. And I managed to put on 10 kgs over the last about 2.5 years. And I'm still far from where I want to be, but I'm definitely much further than where I was before. And those are two things that I worked on so hard. And with the physical, I wanted to put on the weight in a way that was healthy. So I made sure I was eating right and I was in the gym at least 3 to 4 times a week.
So, over the years, I have dedicated myself to continuous self growth and self improvement. I've developed more on the growth of my mindset, and this looks like me constantly, like consistently and constantly checking in with my therapist when I set those dates. Because therapy, 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 I'll never stress more about therapy like I have since the pandemic, but it has worked a lot in improving my emotional intelligence. With that, I'd say I'm better able to understand and manage my own emotions, and I can better empathize with other people. Reading a lot of material, I've made the conscious effort to expand my knowledge, skills through reading, online courses, like going back to school, someone would say, seeking out new experiences, being intentional about the content that I consume online, offline. And this has also like helped me to embrace new challenges and learn from my failures and persist with the minor setbacks that life throws at us. Another thing I'd like to say is that I've gotten better at finding my tribe and my community, or in brackets, my found family, as well as finding community within the church. I think that's helped improve being intentional about changing my environment and conversations that I'm having with the people that I in my circle, because you know what they say, your network is your net worth. Sorry about that. So I've learned to appreciate friendships and relationships in their seasons, allowing the death of some and the birth of new. The last thing that I'd like to add on would be isolation, which was the scariest in the beginning for me, because one would think that isolating, you're lonely. No, you're actually not lonely. You just like, I think you're not missing out on anything. That was my concern. Like, oh my God, I'm missing out on stuff. Like, I have to be every event. But then I got to a point where I was like, nope, that's actually the quickest way to being broke. And being a people pleaser actually means people don't actually like you. So I got to a point where I realized I was too accessible and too available. So I had to isolate and take time to myself to fully understand who I am, my wants and needs. So, like, to conclude, and so overall, like, these efforts have helped me become a better version of myself and enriched my life in countless ways.
Some things that I've done to improve myself over the years include self-development. And so that process looked like reading a lot of either self-help books or asking questions from people that I consider wiser than me or that have had experiences similar to mine, and came out on the other side of those experiences. And certain books concentrated on aspects that I needed to improve on specifically, instead of being just a wide range of self-development aspects that you need to work on. So, for example, communication was one of them. I read this book by John Maxwell called How to Communicate and Connect with Others. And I remember after reading that, I started working on not only being more empathetic towards people through communication, but also being able to know when I've had enough, right? Because I tend to be over empathetic, and that sometimes causes me to experience and feel all the emotions of others, which may not be healthy if there's a limit to that. And so I started practicing when to actually lend an ear fully, and actually be fully empathetic after lending that ear, or just lending an ear and being rational with those feelings and limiting how much they affect me.
Definitely, this question makes me think about the episode of Self-Reflection where I talked a little bit about goals and having a reflection routine. So I won't focus too much on that. But I think also when I think about self-improvement, there's a big step in there for me of self-learning. So understanding why I do the things I do and getting a better idea for what my own biases and expectations and starting places are for things. I think it helps to be able to start with curiosity and get a better idea for why I'm doing what I'm doing right now, to kind of know where I want to go. So I guess for like a simple example, I'm not trying to put deleting Instagram up on some type of pedestal, like this is the best thing a person can do. But I definitely noticed for myself, my self-image would be really affected by spending a lot of time on Instagram. There are certainly lots of known contributors to this, but I didn't notice this until my Instagram got hacked and I was locked out for a few weeks, and I all of a sudden felt great. This period of not having it gave me a lot of time to ask myself some questions, like what am I used to seeing that I'm not seeing? Or what types of things would I distract myself from with this that I'm now paying more attention to? And that really helped me conclude that that was a change that would be worth making. The hacker ended up helping a lot in this case, which is usually not the case. But anyways, I just kind of want to focus on this self-curiosity because sometimes it can be really, really hard to make a change or to, quote unquote, improve ourselves in like a direction that we think all humans should aspire to. So if that's hard, then I think starting with self-curiosity and just asking, why am I doing this the way I'm doing it right now, can be really helpful. Also, seeing a therapist helps a lot with a lot of things. So put a plug in that too.
I've been more open-minded, push myself to try new things, even if it is out of my comfort zone. But definitely there's room for improvement as I need to work on being able to say no to friends.
I think one thing that has really helped to improve myself is to kind of make a self-assessment. So, you know, like how at the beginning of the year, people set goals and like, they're like, okay, this year I want to do this, I want to do that. Although that's really important to do, it's also important to look at what you have achieved and what you haven't achieved within like the past year. So I think it's a really helpful way to kind of see how you're going along the journey of life. And I think that also helps you to be aware of places that you may have done better in certain instances or not, or, you know, looking at how you could have maybe approached a goal or a situation differently by just looking back and assessing.
Yes, I have gone through some life improvements over the last couple of years.
Several years ago, I reached kind of a turning point in my life where I had just gotten out of a very long-term relationship. I reached a pretty big milestone in my career, and so it was really time for me to look inward and improve myself because I had kind of neglected myself for a few years. So there was three things that I knew I wanted to improve. One was my health, weight, my fit. I was never really that unhealthy, but I was, kind of had neglected these things for a few years. So some things I did to improve that were start doing like regular exercise in my weeks. I tried to be really careful about how much I was drinking, like specifically cutting back on drinking beer and like drinking on weekdays, and tried to do a lot more regular cooking in my daily life, like cooking myself good, nutritious, healthy food that I can sustain myself with. The second thing I wanted to improve was my looks and like how I dress. I kind of had to find myself a new style that I liked. And I kind of over time, refreshed my wardrobe with new clothes, new shoes, and kind of reinvented how I dress myself and how I look. And then the third thing I knew I wanted to improve was my social life and my confidence interacting with people, and specifically with things like dating. So what I did to improve that was really just practice, putting myself out there and interacting with people, random people, people I know, and people in between. And the more practice I had, the more I was able to build confidence with interacting with people. Eventually, and when it came to dating, did things like go on speed dating events, got myself in the dating apps, and then started going on one-on-one dates. And eventually, with practice, I got better at dating too. So these are some things that I wanted to improve in my life over the last few years.
Some things that I've done to improve myself over the years is definitely taking the time to work out a lot more. That is one thing that I find makes me feel better after I've done even a small 10-minute workout. It makes me feel really good. So that is one area that I'm working to improve. Another area just overall that I'm working on is just not being a people pleaser. That is something I've definitely struggled with a lot growing up, and it's still something I somewhat struggle with today. But one of the things I've been doing to combat that is just reading lots of books and listening to podcasts and learning ways to be confident in who I am and to use my voice and to speak up and to really work from getting away from just people pleasing in general.
Over the years, I'd like to take credit for improving on a lot of things that I maybe haven't done as much on. Well, one thing that I've actually spent time and improved for myself is being more intentional about learning and developing how I think about my problems and working on listening to other people who are experts. And that looks like reading books about the things that I'm going through and leaning in when I have access to a therapist, when I have access to people who can be mentors to me in my specific situation, and taking their advice and realizing that I don't have most of the answers to life. And so I think having more emphasis put on reading books and actually taking away nuggets of knowledge, that has been helpful to me because I've been able to incorporate some of that to my life. Even though they're really small things, they have been positive in a certain direction, and I think that's been something that I've appreciated.
The biggest thing that I did to improve on myself was therapy. And the reason for that was because I was a very moody person, and you, Michelle, would know that because we practically grew up together. From grade 1 to 5, you were one person that I would see almost every day from a good 8 to 3 o'clock. And then also in uni from high school from form 1 to 6. So we literally spent a really big chunk with each other. which is over 10 years or whatever. So anyway, and I think you would understand this more. I was a very moody person, and also as a kid, I give myself grace because as children, we don't know how to control our emotions. We don't know what to do with them because we're kids. We're kids. It's also like a baby. They cry. They don't know how to control that emotion. And for me, that was moodiness. So as I grew up, as I started going to work and things like that, I felt like I needed to work on myself just to be a better person around my colleagues and also work. We spend too much time at work and, you'd want it to be as pleasant as possible. And as an empathetic person, I felt like I owed it to the next person because, man, adulting is hard. So I started going to therapy, and that helped me a lot to uncover the reasons for my behavior, which is mostly childhood trauma and all those things. So yeah, now I'm trying to be a wholesome person, and what I need to improve on, or what I've been working on of late, is passive aggressiveness and just being open or able to express the way I feel. Like if someone hurts me or someone says something that I don't like, I'm learning to validate my feelings, and not to brush them off or to say I'm being too much, but just being able to express it to the next person. And I think that also helps in try not to bottle things up, and then or you acting a type of way to the other person to the point where they start wondering what's going on. So it's something I've been working on, yeah, basically that's something that I've been working on it since my most recent relationship or breakup or whatever. And I think we tend to see ourselves or the people that we are more in a relationship because it's just you and this person, and you're more likely to act yourself with a partner or a significant other than you are with someone else. So you kind of, I don't want to say mirror for lack of a better word. You get to see yourself or like how you react, and it's also a good way to somewhat reflect and work on yourself. So I think that's why I also started working on that passive aggressiveness, just to be a better person for my partner and also for my peers and the people that I love. And I'd say it's been going well. But yeah, it's a journey. And I'm also still going to therapy, which is also good.
So I'll start by talking about one thing that I've been, I always strive to improve myself in is how to communicate. And, I started learning pretty quickly, especially after high school, when you're really thrown into the world, that communication is key, not only with your friends, family, loved ones, partners. Communicating effectively is actually pretty hard, right? And particularly because it's about perception, not only how you perceive things and how you communicate things, but how the other person perceives and interprets what you're saying, right? So you not only have to be aware of yourself, but you have to be aware of what the other person is, right? So because communication and perception, it's not what you look at that matters, it's what you see. That's one thing that I really got to understand as I grew older, right? It goes back to the whole cup. Is the cup half empty or half full? It's not what you look at that matters, it's what you see. So that has been a very important aspect in me learning how to communicate with others. I might communicate in a way that makes sense to me and I think has passed through to the other person, but how they perceive it is different. So a big way I've learned how to improve myself is just reading books. You're always trying to learn, trying to understand. And I always do this with my friends. I'm like, hey, have you read this book? It has really good perspective or message in how you see things, because the more you read, the more you understand different ways of putting things in different ways than how people think.
or how we perceive life. It opens you up to finding new ways to communicate. So you communicate not only in how you understand, but in a way that the other person who has a different perception of you understands. So I'd say reading books, always asking for advice. I like Bruce Lee's quote. He says, take what is useful, add what is uniquely your own, and then you get something else, right? So you learning is about taking everything and then take what is useful, add what is your own to improve yourself. So that's kind of some of the things that I've done to improve myself.
What are some things I've done to improve myself over the years? Oh, this is exciting because I think I have one umbrella word for this, which is journaling. I started journaling after college, and for me, journaling is about putting my experiences, whatever I encounter, putting it into words and documenting it, whether it is for that time or for me to look back at a later time. And that has helped me understand myself better because I usually journal my life experiences, right? So any life experiences that I encounter, be it with a friend, a family member, a relative, a romantic partner, or just like any other life experiences, be it at work, with my career, with just like anybody, social interactions, or just by myself. Journaling is about putting those experiences down and documenting them. But most important, it's about documenting how those experiences have made me feel. So if I were to think about my health or my physical well-being, how has eating this donut, this cake, how is going on this diet made me feel, how has exercise made me feel, if it's made me feel great or anxious about my body or anything really. So just about the physical, or even like a social interaction with somebody that I've met for the first time, or somebody that I'm considering as a date or as a romantic partner. How are those experiences, social interactions making me feel? Journaling that and putting that into words for myself helps me to look better and to understand, those interactions better. If I feel sad, why am I feeling sad about meeting this person or having an interaction with this person? So does this mean that I should continue? What needs to be changed? What needs to stay the same? If I am in a job, how has this job made me feel over the many times that I've documented my experience at this workplace or having this position at at an organization or at a company? So should I continue being there, right? If I meet somebody who I think I want to be friends with, how are my social interactions with this person making me feel at the end of the day, the week, or whatever times that we've met? So should I continue? What's missing? Are they making me feel happy about myself? Do I feel anxious meeting this person over and over again? So that means I need to change something. So for me, journaling has been that exercise for me that keeps everything in check and has really helped me with different life experiences, right? If I'm feeling happy about something, it means that I can continue doing it. If I'm not, then I need to pull back. I need to change something. And I can only change my life for the better if I put it down into words, because I definitely feel like sometimes we go through life and we have no idea how things are making us feel, why we need to change or why we need to stay the same. But with me, journaling has been that exercise that has kept everything in check. And so my physical, whether I should keep exercising, whether I should keep eating something, whether I should keep talking to somebody, has helped or has been helped by journaling. So that is the one thing for me as an umbrella action that has helped me improve my life. And I think improving my life is an ongoing exercise that will never end. So just keep documenting all those life experiences. For me is very important to keep everything in check.
I think over the years, I've gotten better at communicating with friends and family. I used to think that because I was grinding, because I was focused, and I needed to be like in my little hole building. But as I grew older and matured, I realized that the climb never ends really. Because when you arrive at the destination of everything you're praying for and wanting, there's always the next target and goal. But life is moving, So I think I've gotten better at, calling my parents, checking in on friends, deepening all my human connections. And yeah, I think my life has become fuller because of that, actually.
I would say the top two are fitness and mental health. In terms of my fitness, I used to do track back when I was younger, when I was in primary school, high school. I used to play volleyball, even though some people say it's not a sport. So I was pretty active when I was younger. And at some point, that kind of fell through the cracks. And during COVID, I gave myself a challenge to just go running 1 mile a day. That's it. That's all I was aiming for, 1 mile. Not 20 miles, not 30 miles, just one. And over time, I actually managed to build up to me going for a 10K race at Turkey Trek right before Thanksgiving in 2022. That was fun. I would totally do it again. And then in terms of my mental health, I've been listening to a lot of audio books, just self-help books. One of my most favorite books of all time is The Alchemist. So books like that just like have you thinking about life and reflecting. I love such books. It's been a while since I read science fiction. My thought is if I want to read science, if I'm curious about a science fiction story, might as well watch a movie or a TV show. So when I read or listen to audiobooks, it's mostly just to help the way I process my emotions, process events that have happened, like, trying to work on the victim mentality and all that stuff. So just being able to process things better, that's the work that I've had to do with my mental health, not taking things personally, that sort of thing. So those are the top two, fitness and mental health.
Well, growing up, I was struggling with communicating with people, interacting with people, basic interaction, understanding how people say or what they mean or their expressions generally. So over the years, I started playing professional rugby as a hobby, actually. By that, I used to travel a lot with rugby, different countries, so many places I've seen, meeting different kind of people, cultures, personality, and with that, I learned how to communicate with people because now I was forced to interact. So by doing so, you start to open up, and with time, I was now used to talking to different kind of people, trying to understand their personality, their culture, how they think, how they act, and appreciating a person as a human also.
Some things I've done are getting right with God, my relationship with Him, because I feel like with everything that I do, I obviously need to include God. We plan, but at the end of the day, God decides. So I feel like just putting God in the forefront of all my decisions, or if I'm going through something, then just talking to Him, because most of the time, we talk to God, but He also has a lot to say to us. So sometimes just listening to Him and hearing what He has to say is good. And also another thing that I've done to improve myself is basically working out. Mentally, physically, it's just so beneficial. And now it's become more of a lifestyle than just, something that I have to do or whatever. It's now a lifestyle. And I feel like it's just so beneficial in so many ways. And I'm liking the fact that so many people are starting to tap into that, workout making working out a lifestyle, which is just awesome, and it's great to see the girlies on the internet. It's just amazing. So yep. And another thing as well is also journaling. I feel like just reflecting on your life or just dreams, whatever dream you have, just journaling it down, whether it's a dream in your sleep or just dreams, aspirations that you have. I feel like just journaling everything down. Also, you have a record of everything you journal down, and you could always go back and just take a look at it. Yeah.
So when I realized that I needed to improve on just my self-esteem and my feelings of self-love, I went to therapy in order to better learn how to be able to do that. But I also started to do some things that brought me a lot of joy, like coloring and working out, and that helped me to reconnect with myself.
One of the main things I've changed over the last couple of years compared to earlier in life is making sure to take care of my body, to help make sure that I am able to live a long, healthy and happy life. And that definitely involved making some improvements both in how I fueled and moved my body. And it didn't have to be anything major, just a few small tweaks here and there, daily check-ins of how things are going and how things could be going, and what I was doing well and what I wasn't doing well, and just making sure that it didn't fall all the way to the bottom of the priority list.
One thing that I've done to improve myself is I've stopped working less. And that has entailed, I was really burnt out and was in the habit of taking on opportunities for the sake of it. Partly because I felt an insecurity about my chosen path in life, and was feeling insecure about what the future looked like. And so I would pile on whatever I thought would make my CV look attractive, and that did untold damage to my energy and my body and just my overall well-being. I was very, very burnt out. And so I have stopped saying no to things. I have become very strict and have very strong boundaries around where I spend my energies, including what I show up for, events, how often or how quickly I respond to messages, whether they be family, friends, or work. And even my to-do list for the day, for work and for school, is like accomplish 3 things. Just 3 things. You don't have to do more. If you do more, that's amazing. But at least let's just try to do 3. And that's really helped me. It's helped me be more productive. It's helped me feel more accomplished. But it also helps me not feel overwhelmed and just not as busy and not as burnt out. It means that the work that I do and the energy that I have is a lot more sustained than when I'm piling a million things on my lap. So yeah, that's one thing that I've changed that has worked for me.
I think I'll start with what I was trying to improve and then how I went about it. I think emotional intelligence is something that I definitely want or still am improving on. And I think the manner in which I've done that is through books. So reading books, I think there's some pretty good books on emotional intelligence, emotional agility, and some good resources online just to gauge where you are when it comes to the EQ test. I know there's an IQ test, there's also an EQ test. So just kind of those resources online have really been helpful in trying to increase that emotional intelligence. I think for a lot of other things as well, I think definitely just reading books has been a good way in order to bulk up on skills and just knowledge, even just like financial knowledge, and creating the right habits as well through books is always a good way to improve. And I think lastly, through mentors. I would encourage people to have mentors in different aspects. So you may have financial mentors, you have relationship mentors, you've got life mentors. People will just teach you give you a few nuggets on wisdom on how to navigate relationships, how to navigate your career, how to navigate even your finances.
Okay, so I needed to work on giving myself more grace in terms of everything in life generally. I used to struggle with giving myself grace. I used to be so hard on myself. I used to really, really struggle if things don't go the way I would have wanted them to go, or if I make mistakes, or if I disappoint people, or if I just feel bad about certain things. So I realized that I'm putting a burden on myself and expect myself to be perfect in every situation, be it my own situation or other people's situations where I'm involved. So I needed to learn to give myself more grace, because it would put a toll on myself, and I'd really, really struggle. So how I worked on that, I told myself I'm not perfect, and as much as I might want things to work out the way I want them all the times, I might make mistakes, and life doesn't work like that. Things go south, things go west, and things go north and east. So I needed to be more gracious with myself, and to at least allow myself to make mistakes and learn from them, and to not be too hard on myself if things don't go the way I would have wanted them to go. I hope I managed to put that in a very clear way. But I've been doing very well. Now I put myself first more, and even when people expect certain results from me and I fail to deliver, I tell myself I needed to do ABC, so I needed to do me first. And you can't really pour from an empty cup, hey? You need to make sure that you fill your cup and it's overflowing, so that you can be able to then flow into other people's lives. So I need to make sure that all the time I put myself first, so that I don't feel like I then owe people anything before I do things for myself first.
I'll share 3 things that I've worked on improving over the past few years. The first one being more consistent and disciplined when it comes to content creation. Some of you might know that I have / had a YouTube channel. I haven't been active on it in a couple of years. But anyway, when I started that channel, I was very consistent, very disciplined about releasing content. So every week there'll be a video coming out. And that happened for a few months. And then, other life things started happening. Life got in the way. And I think another thing too was just discouragement. So for people who would do this content creation stuff, sometimes you're looking at the views and you're looking at the numbers, and it just got discouraging. And I think that probably fed into why I wasn't consistent. But it's kind of this cycle, right? Where it's like, if you're not consistent with it, then the numbers are not going to grow. But if you look at the numbers not growing, that's going to make you feel discouraged, and then you're just not going to put out the content. So something I've done with this podcast here, over the past few years, is just being consistent, not looking at numbers, and just working on planning ahead of time so that I can be consistent with releasing the content. And so the first year I was releasing 2 episodes per week, and then the second year I kind of scaled back and I was doing like 1 episode a week. So something that I've really worked on over the past few years is being consistent, and how I've achieved that is just being very intentional about putting out content. I will go to coffee shops, or I'll be in coffee shops or other places where I'll be like, okay, let me plan out episodes, like what episode is going to come when, who do I need to reach out to make this happen, and all of that. And also just kind of always being on the go. So, I'll be flying somewhere and I will be editing a podcast episode. So I think I've been more intentional and more consistent, and that's really helped me. And also just not even looking at the numbers and what they're doing. So that's really helped me out. Of course, I've missed some weeks, and sometimes it's like, I've missed some months in terms of content creation because of life stuff happening, but I've really tried to just improve that. The second thing is advocating for myself at work. And this is something that I learned through an informal mentorship relationship that I had, where this lady was basically telling me that you have to advocate for yourself, right? Like, if you want to go to the next level in your career, you need to tell people, like, put it in people's faces, like, hey, this is what I've done. Like, this is what I've done. What do I need to do to get to the next stage? And then constantly just checking in with those people in terms of what you need to do to get to the next stage, instead of like, just taking a back seat and hoping that people are seeing the good work that you're doing. And then a third thing that I'll mention here is kind of identifying things that I want to work on. I think one I can think of is like, being more financially savvy. And I'm an audiobook girl, not a physical book read type of person. And so I have a bunch of audiobooks that speak to all sorts of different things in terms of finances, just things that I want to learn about as well. So that's been very helpful for me. And it's been years of growth, still more that I can do for sure. But those are some of those things that I've done to improve myself.